Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kansept Integra, which is actually a production version of the original custom JK Integra, or JK Knives Integra, which I'm showing you the full custom version of right here, obviously. That's really cool. I think had I not been familiar with the original one, this would have just flown under the radar. But as I have had a chance to carry and use this thing and look it over, I really appreciate the design in ways that I never thought that I would. And this might be one of Kansept's best knives that they have done for a few different reasons. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Thanks so much to Kansept Knives for providing this knife for review. I will link it right down below. It's absolutely available in a bunch of different forms. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. So a lot of you might remember when I unboxed it, I was like, it's the Integra? People were saying you're not saying it right. It's the Integra. Well, it actually says Integra on the blade. So I was like, because the original is absolutely called the Integra, right? So did they oh, well, it's a production version, so we're just going to call it something different. So I went to look at Blade HQ. They have it listed as Integra. And I said, well, okay, maybe they just assumed that, and it was actually, because it's printed Integra, right? So I went to look at a bunch of other retailers. Same thing. Kansept Integra. So I thought, okay, let's put an end to this mystery and go to the Kansept website. They have it listed as Integra as well, which means this is an actual misprint. I don't know if they've corrected this, or if you decide to buy this knife, if it says Integra. I kind of think that that's kind of cool. If you're a collector, it's always fun to get things that are misprinted. I mean, if you're a collector of anything, then you know like a misprint is not always indicative of, increased value. Sometimes it's just fun, right? So I think that's kind of funny. But just to clear that up, it is officially called the Integra. Let's go ahead and I haven't had many misprints in the 3,500 uploads that I've done. I can't say that I've seen that. So funny. Yeah, that's really cool, Complex. Wow. Can you move on and do the review? All right. So the overall length is 8.35 inches. The blade length is coming in at 3.5. You could say as long as 3.75 if you come all the way down to here, but I would say your average, considering we have a peak on the frame, we're looking at about 3.5. Cutting edge, 3.35. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2? This guy is absolutely almost exactly the same length as the Rat 1. How about up against the Demco AD 20.5? How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Essentially exactly the same overall length as the Spyderco PM2. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? There we go. And then finally, let's do the Benchmade Bug Out and the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue. I think I'll bring back the custom Integra for you guys to take a look at. So the overall length of this guy, just gonna look because there are a couple of differences here. If we go butt to butt, the Kansept is actually a hair longer. There are some other differences, just subtle things, little tiny things like the shape up here, the hardware, the exact placement of the pocket clip, right? We've got a captive pivot on the custom. There's a few differences, but it is largely extremely similar. And this is pretty common. Usually when we do a production version of a custom, they are not exact. There's always a couple of things that are a little bit different. I think that's a good idea. That way people who pick up, the custom, right? I don't know about you guys, but it drives me nuts when companies like Dodge do you know, to throw in another car example here, when they're like, we got the new Super Ninja 9000 fire-breathing demon version with however much horsepower, and it's got some cool aesthetic features too that don't necessarily do anything for performance, but it helps distinguish the Demon 9000 Super Ninja Ultra Wizard Edition to the common, you know, the little GT, little V6, whatever. No, hey, listen, if that's what you drive, that's fine, right? I don't know why you're driving a Charger and you didn't get the V8, but okay, maybe you did it for the gas mileage, right? But it helps distinguish. And then a year later, they're like, you know what? Let's put the flashy wings and the flashy stuff. Let's put it on the Hemi models, right? Okay, a little annoying. Next year, let's put it on the V6 models. And I'm like, why? Why? Why'd you do that? Why? So the people like, it's not the special. Anyways, I don't own either, so I don't know why it bothers me. But I think it's a good idea to distinguish the special versions from the production versions, right? I think that's neat. There's a little bit of pride of ownership there, but that comes from somebody who's both an enthusiast and collector who cares about stuff like that. I think the vast majority of people don't care, so I apologize to everybody who wasted their time sitting and listening to me rant about it. Nice job, Kansept and JK. You did it correctly, in my opinion. Okay, moving on. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It is actually pretty thin. It's deceptive though, because there's a chamfering line. Maybe it's actually a hair thinner, not by much. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This guy is pretty long and straight. It's almost a long straight rectangle. Most of the blade disappears inside of the frame. So in terms of height, you're not looking at anything crazy, right? But lengthwise, it's almost exactly, it's a hair shorter than the PM2, definitely longer than the Para 3. For the most part, I didn't really have much trouble carrying this. This is right around the size of knife that I like to carry, and there's just not enough titanium or material here to have made it felt like it was cumbersome. We have, the frame has been milled out for weight reduction, and let's go ahead and weigh it actually. Titanium, and then what are we looking at for the blade steel? We're looking at M390 in this case. They always, sorry, my camera's like, this is about the scale, right? You want to look at the scale. No. M390. We see a lot of S35VN from Kansept, so it's cool to see, you know, not to say that one is universally better than the other, but it's nice to see them switch it up just a little bit for variety. But there's also a Damascus version of this, which is not Damasteel. It's likely a 9CR, 10CR combination because that's what we usually see, but I gotta admit, I don't actually know. I just think the last time I heard that's what Kansept was using. Their patterns do look good though. If you buy a Damascus version from Kansept, you're gonna get a nice looking pattern. It's not gonna be that chalky, goofy stuff that people find on Amazon that just looks like they took black and white paint and threw it at a white canvas, right? It looks a lot better than that. So the weight on this is coming in at 4.34 ounces, which isn't insane, especially considering you could say the blade is 3.75 inches, you know, long, so the ratios are not bad. I think there's quite a bit more weight in the titanium scales, though. Yeah, the balance is actually quite a ways back here. And I think a lot of you looking at this knife will realize it's not quite the same as in the custom. In the custom, it's really obvious. But there's quite a bit more handle aesthetically than there is blade, and it's not just length, it's also height, right? Not quite a bit. It's just you can see it if you look. It's a stupid statement. If you look at it, you can see it. Oh, professional reviewer. But yeah, it comes in at 4.37 ounces, which isn't bad, but you might notice that it's a bit butt heavy, right? Not that big of a deal. For people who don't care about balance, you're just not going to care. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. So we get a T8 here. I think that's actually, now Kansept is still using T6 for the frame, but we do have a T8 head. This is different than the production version. We do have a it's not a captive pivot. As I stated on the custom, we have the captive pivot here. And then all of the body screws are going to be T6. There's not a lot. You really don't have much hanging on here. I mean, the backspacer up here has obviously got some sort of like lipped keg or something, which eliminates the need for additional hardware, and that's nice. But not a lot of hardware, so nice minimal hardware. I mean, if you're gonna have T6, it's at least nice to not have too many. And then there's just one screw for the clip, so that's good. Easy to take apart. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here. I don't think it's too crazy. I'll measure the other one as well. Where can I get a hold of this? I think I'm gonna have to do it like right here. Yeah, it's not thin at all. We have it says 116 thousandths. Is it different on this guy? So there's another difference here with the custom. The entire top portion of that blade is sunk much further into the frame. But I think this is actually still maximum thickness out here. So I think maybe I can just grab it right there. Yeah, it's pretty close. This is 115 thousandths. So close, not exactly the same. Let's go ahead and move into the meat and potatoes here. It's actually kind of a cool profile. One of the problems here is that in order to keep this aesthetic, right, they have not taken any chunks out of this line in order to allow better access to the lock bar. They did knock it out on both sides though, and that means you're not having to jam your finger into quite as narrow an area. I mean, I'll be honest, it's pretty easy to get in there and disengage it. But it would have been easier had they cut this slightly lower, and I don't think it would have taken away from the aesthetic. I've become kind of a stickler on this because I love good lock bar access. I don't like having to, I can't be bothered to be slightly inconvenienced anymore. It's not that big of a deal, truthfully. I mean, you can still get in there, right? You know, it's not quite as easy as if there were just a little bit right here so you could get in and approach it from the side instead of straight on. The flipper tab is so low profile that it's one of those where you kind of have to get in the right spot to, if you're going to disengage it with one hand, which is how most people are disengaging frame lock flippers, right? You want to disengage the lock so that the flipper tab passes your thumb and the blade, the unsharpened portion of the blade just barely catches your fingernail before you turn it to the side and drop it into the closed position, which is possible. It's just a little more tricky. Usually we have a situation where either the flipper tab catches your finger and by that time the detent ball is well up on the face of the blade so that you can avoid what we call double clutch, which is where the detent ball is not quite up there and it sort of bounces back and forth and the blade doesn't want to fall. Or you have a substantial enough sharpening choil or finger choil to where there's no chance of sharpened blade coming down on your finger. But as you can see here, if you don't get high enough, you absolutely can catch your fingernail, which is anywhere from annoying to painful. Again, not that big of a deal. This is just something I'm pointing out so that those of you who are more bothered by it can decide whether or not that's going to be a problem for you. I think for the vast majority of people, it's not going to be a problem. You know, it's just, for me, really, that's not a big deal. It's the fact that that this is kind of a pinchy, narrow zone, right? And after a while, if you're going to sit around and fidget with it, which is only something that's important to some people, you're going to notice your thumb getting pinched a little bit, but not really that big of a deal. Ergonomically, this is a long, nearly rectangular shape. Now the edges are knocked down, right, a little bit, but we don't have any contour or anything like that. It's pretty flat. I mean, it really feels like you're holding on to exactly the shape that you're looking at. There's not much here in terms of lock-in. It's a smooth, in this case, blasted piece of titanium that's been knocked down at the edges, but there's no real lock-in. So it's nice to look at, right? There is a little bit of a choke-up area right here because they've knocked these edges of the flipper tab down enough. You can kind of, you know, comfortably choke up here, but I would be very aware of how close your index finger is to the cutting edge. That's a little bit more comfortable, I think, than everything back here. It's not terrible, but it's not good, right? I mean, this is like, I would give this like a C-. I've definitely handled knives that are way less comfortable, but I'd give this a C-, right? It's okay. I mean, it's a thing that the human hand can hang on to, and if you're gonna have to use this, you know, for long periods of work, you're gonna become uncomfortable much faster than something like the Spyderco Shaman or other knives that have extremely ergonomic handle designs, right? Cue the people saying the Spyderco Shaman's not actually ergonomic, but that's just, you know, this is not going to be super duper comfortable over a long period of time while you're cutting, but it's okay, and it is pleasant to look at, which in this territory is absolutely worth pointing out because the people who are actually buying this stuff take that into consideration. You're not paying over $200 for a pocket knife unless you think it looks good, right? So 100% that's worth pointing out. The only people who say otherwise are people who don't buy knives like that, right? So we got to be relevant to the relevant, viewers and buyers. Anyways, the blade shape is pretty simple. It's like a long reverse tanto, which is something I'm going to continue to say. There's like one guy who gets really upset with me every time I say reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. That guy is absolutely making the zestiest pot of spaghetti right now. I'm just joking around with you guys, but I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to say reverse tanto, reverse tanto, reverse tanto every chance I get now. But that's what it looks like to me, right? A lot of, depending on who you are and how you classify blades, right? Anymore, everybody's a blade master, right? Because you can just use Google and just take whatever information you want and apply it to whatever shape that's even remotely similar to whatever you think the original was, right? Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. We have a tumbled finish on this guy. It comes in a wide variety of different finishes. Honestly, day to day, yeah, this is going to be a great blade shape. It's got a tip. The tip's pointed down just slightly, so you can still do draw cuts and things. Fine slicer, not super duper thin behind the edge, but also not thick. It's kind of in between. Flat that carries out about 85 to 90% the length of the blade. Tip's going to be slightly delicate, so as is the case with any other pocket knife, don't use it like your grandpa, because your grandpa's wrong about knives. Grandpas think that knives are screwdrivers and hammers, and people pride themselves, My grandpa taught me that a knife can be all of these things. Well, you guys are both dumb. Sorry. That's going to sting. That's going to come down like a big old heavy pot of spaghetti right on your toes, right? But you guys were wrong. Knives are knives, it turns out. 2023 official statement from Metal Complex. Turns out knives are knives and are meant for cutting, which is amazing and mind-blowing, right? A lot of people won't accept that, but it turns out that that's factually true. If you do things that take away from the capabilities of a blade, anything that would destroy the tip or dull the blade beyond, what it's supposed to be used for, then it loses its ability to perform the very tasks that it was designed to perform. I'll let that cook just a little bit. It's amazing how many people are still there. I'm doing it on purpose. 100%, right? So don't take the bait. Just let me do it. But anyways, the blade's going to be just fine for day-to-day tasks, right? I mean, extreme sort of cold steel stuff, no, buy a cold steel. But regular knife stuff, yeah, it'll work just fine. Fit and finish on this is very good. Kansept has really come a long way since the first few that I've handled. I think they've gotten substantially better. The action on this one is really, out of the box, it is very controlled, extremely smooth, almost ready to be completely and totally dropped shut. We do have a tiny little bit of lock stick, just a little bit. It's so minor that I'm inclined to believe that it will work itself out rather than get worse. Some knives, the lock stick gets worse for a little bit and then works itself out. I have a feeling that's not going to be the case here. But on that point, the one thing left that I do seem to experience more often with this brand than any other brand is lock stick. I don't know what they're doing that's different, but Kansept, I think you're making a great product. Your prices are fair, all of that. Yes, I did get this knife for free, but, as per usual on this channel, a free knife doesn't mean I'm not going to critique it. You guys got to get your lock stick situation figured out. It's like every other knife or every 3 knives, maybe it's not that much. Let's say it's 25% of the knives that I receive directly from Kansept, there's lock stick. It's not usually very bad. It's usually something that'll work itself out over a short to medium period of time. But I do notice it. And I know that people spending this kind of money on this stuff don't really like to feel that, right? Now, if every company had the same deal, maybe not that big of a deal, right? It just would be expected, but no, not really. Most companies have this figured out. So whatever's going on with the lock stick, I think that's something that should be addressed. Outside of that, Fit and finish is very, very good. They even have on this one, look at this detent. That's nice. Very nice detent. Very appropriately tuned. Snappy, clicky, feels good. There is a lanyard thing. Hallelujah for lanyard people. The small community that they are. Very much appreciate that. You can put your lanyard right here. There is no position to mount the pocket clip for left-handed carry, which is a shame because left-handed people exist. It does sit, I think, actually right on top. I'm going to check that real quick. Because if that's the case, then they should. I mean, it's one thing when it sits nested into the titanium because that means they have to mill a slot to nest it in, like on the other side, and then you have to look at it, which I don't mind always. Depends. If there's a beautiful texture pattern, then maybe, but sometimes, you know, I get it. This actually appears to be, I think it's actually nested. Come on, screw. Boy, that's in there. Is it? What's going on here? Is there a hidden screw? There is. There's a hidden screw. And I'm like unscrewing it by making it go around like this. But now I'm going to have to get in there and see. Or it's a peg. Is it a peg? Yeah, it's just a peg. This is, just do this on the other side. It's not even nested. So the reason they do that is because one screw, when it's not nested, is not enough to keep it from wiggling around, right? So they put a peg in there. And that's fine, but I mean, it's not even nested. So just do another hole, another couple of holes on the other side. No big deal. Most people are not going to care to look at that, right? So lefties, I'm sure there's left-handed people out there who would like a Kansept Integra. So that would have been a better move. Now, they would have had to change the clip design because the clip is not symmetrical. If you flip it over to the other side, then it's angled differently, right? So that's one thing. You know, maybe the original designer wanted to keep the pocket clip one way. Still, though, we do have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. So that's nice. In and out of the pocket, this is really great. I actually really like the clip. It's about, you know, maybe could have been a little shorter, but no big deal. Nicely knocked down at the edges. It's a full milled clip, sculpted right, and goes with the theme of the knife. Looks really good. Nice backspacer here. Very easy in and out of the pocket due to the ramp underneath. We have internal stops that are attached to the blade, so they contact the titanium on either side. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. Minimal lock stick. No pivot lash. Very smooth. One of the smoothest Kansepts I've ever felt. Nice detent, and we have, I think if we are slightly off, it's from me having flipped it. So let me see if I can actually bring that back just a bit. We'll test here how free spinning that pivot is. It does want to free spin, but there's enough retention there. I think we got the centering back. There's enough retention there to keep it. Now, how's the action? We keep the action? Oh, yeah, we did. Okay. Yeah, the tolerances are tight enough that it is a free spinning pivot, but it gets tight enough to loosen or tighten the pivot. So these come in M390 in titanium at $239. You can get the Damascus ones for a little less, which is cool. I don't think that's terrible, right? Kansept usually uses S35VN, and their prices come in anywhere from $20 to $40 cheaper, it seems like, right? In this general size, you know, this area. It's not a terrible price tag. I think maybe it's because it's the Integra, you know, it's like, hey, it's production JK Integra. How about an extra, you slide me an extra 20 there, guy, you know? I don't know. Then again, I don't know how many people are aware of the JK knives, you know, thing. So maybe some people. It is cool that you can get this in production form, and it is so similar to the custom, right? It's really cool, and it feels really nice. This is a nice knife, too. It doesn't have much in the way of ergonomics, right? So if you're planning on taking this out and like using it for long periods of time every day, there are definitely better choices. But I think to enthusiast collectors, especially people who are familiar with JK knives, you might like this one a lot more. I wish it was a little less still. I wish that Kansept would still be like, hey, we're coming in a little lighter, you know, on the price tag than the competition. But it's okay. Generally speaking, I think people who like the look of this knife will very much enjoy this. But it's not something that I think every single person is going to enjoy versus everything else in this general territory. For a lot of people, this absolutely will fly under the radar because it doesn't look a lot different than a lot of the other titanium frame locks on the market, especially when we have like just a plain tumbled blade and a blasted frame, right? It's going to blend right in. A lot of people will never even know that it exists. But if you're, like I said, if you're a fan of JK knives and you know who designed this, then you might like it a little more. So that's going to be pretty much it. Like I said, it'll be linked down below. You guys can check it out. I think there's some new versions coming as well, so it kind of depends on when you're watching this video. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.